Awesome. So before I jump in, just letting you know that, and also our audience, this session will be recorded, and then we're gonna be shared on the Tamusa Maze. But let's get started. So hello everyone. My name is Dr. Yassi Kurd, and I'm a career advisor working with the Maze Center for Experiential Learning and Community Engagement. Today we're gonna be having a really great conversation with Lara Kilgore and then Gail Timberlake about LinkedIn, and then even more, whatever questions you have regarding LinkedIn and then how to use LinkedIn in your, the job search, information interviews, even seeking for mentors, you're gonna find answers for sure. But before I jump in and then ask, our panelists to introduce themselves, just, housekeeping items. If you're not speaking, please mute yourself, so it's gonna be better for conversation. And then the second, you can see that there's a chat box on the bottom of your screen. So if you have any questions, please feel free to, write those questions on the comment section so we can make sure that our panelists, answer your questions. And then last but not least, so again, this is a recording session and we're gonna be sharing this amazing conversation on our Tamusa Maze YouTube channel. Okay, let's get started then. So could you please introduce yourself, Gail, for us?
Hi, I'm Dr. Gail Timberlake. I am so excited to be here with you to talk about LinkedIn Local and also about conversations that give you an ROI, a return on your investment. So I'm excited to be here. Thank you, Yassir, for putting this together.
Thank you, Gail. Laura.
Hi guys, my name is Lara Kilgore. I own and operate Beyond Education. We are an education consulting firm based here in San Antonio, and Gail and I have known each other for over 5 years. We might be close to 10 now. And we have been working on the LinkedIn local community here in San Antonio, with Gail spearheading that. And I am very excited to share this space with you guys today and give you whatever tools I can possible. I'm going to speak specifically on informational interviews, which I think is one of the most underutilized tools that can really accelerate your ability to get a job or an interview right out of college, or even while you're in college pursuing a degree. And happy to answer whatever questions you have in the best capacity possible. So thank you, Yassir and your team, for inviting us to speak. It's such an honor, and excited to get started.
We are very happy to have you both. Okay, so let's start with Lisa. So what is LinkedIn Local San Antonio? How that started? So if you can briefly talk about that experience, so our audience can learn about, this amazing organization.
Yeah, I'm so happy to talk with you about that. I didn't share a little bit about myself, so I'm an executive coach. I work with businesses and leaders to develop their people primarily. And I got involved in LinkedIn Local. I was actually approached there were 5 individuals who started LinkedIn Local about 4.5 years ago. And I was in a conversation with them on LinkedIn, and they asked about the larger San Antonio area. And I was interested in that as well, wondering, where is LinkedIn Local here? And there was no LinkedIn Local affiliation in San Antonio. So I expressed interest, and they said, well, great, let's put you through this process. We went through that process to begin a LinkedIn Local piece for the San Antonio area. So we had a couple of events, loved that time, really brought in leaders from around the city, both in large corporations, business owners, and we had some people who were just getting started in the workforce. And so it was a great collaboration and a good place to learn and have some events where people were really able to have really meaningful conversations. So that was the beginning of LinkedIn Local. Post-COVID, we have lots of opportunities for it to look different than it did before. So this is a really fun way to be able to get out to people to talk about what LinkedIn is about, why LinkedIn Local matters, and how we can help facilitate people who are interested in LinkedIn.
Awesome. Thank you for bringing LinkedIn Local to San Antonio, Gail. But how is your experience with LinkedIn Local, Lara?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
How was your experience? How has been your experience with LinkedIn Local?
Yeah, I think one of the things that Gail and I recognized very early on, she and I have both attended a lot of networking events. And one of the things that I've heard, especially from women, professional women or women wanting to enter the professional field, is that it is very overwhelming. And she and I both stated early on that we had a strong intention to make sure that these events felt very inviting. And because there's lots of different communities and there's lots of different groups to get involved with here. All of them have great opportunities, but we wanted to make sure that the LinkedIn local space felt very accessible. And so we put a lot of effort into the initial events of making sure that people felt engaged, that it didn't feel like, for those people who got overwhelmed by the thought of having to show up to an event with a business card and start 10 different conversations with people they didn't know, that they had some different ways to get involved, so it just didn't feel like a huge barrier. So we had different activities and icebreakers and speakers who would come in and talk about communication and have activities where people got to engage in a very authentic, very organic way. Again, so it didn't put the pressure all on you as the individual to come in like ready to go. Because I get it. I've been to events where I'm like, I'm just not in the mood. Like, I am just not in the mood. I'll show up. I'm like, that's the best I got today. And if somebody wants to talk to me, great. But I may not pass out any business cards. So I think wanting to make LinkedIn Local a space where people can connect with their community, can find opportunities to use their own skills and passions and talents to find a job and a career in a way that feels really authentic.
Awesome. And then LinkedIn Local is like really getting very popular, not just in, you know, the States, but even all around the world. Like we had that conversation last time with, you know, the gal with you. You know, from Europe to Asia to, you know, the Africa, so pretty much it's everywhere. So again, thank you both, you know, doing great job regarding this, Lisa, and then getting, you know, the professionals, you know, connected. But even I believe for our students and then staff right now, you know, joining us or hopefully will be watching this recording, they can always go and then, you know, to join these events and then expand their networking. Is because some people unfortunately think that LinkedIn Locals is only for, you know, the professionals or entry-level professions, but even like the students cannot believe go join that. This is what I see with the other LinkedIn Local, you know, around the nation. Awesome. So Lara, last time when we had conversation, you mentioned about, you know, Beyond Education. So it's your, you know, the company, and then you're doing an amazing job utilizing LinkedIn. It seems like every single day in your workplace. And then regarding informational interviews, like finding mentors, could you please tell us a little bit about, you know, what's that approach you have regarding implementing LinkedIn in your workplace, and then also helping these students or professionals you work with to utilize LinkedIn for this purpose? Again, finding mentors or information interviews and even more.
Yeah, so as a business owner, there's a lot of problems that interact with LinkedIn. One, I think recognizing right off the bat what LinkedIn is, and you may hear some different opinions, but I think generally everybody can agree it is like a professional Facebook. So that means that you're not sharing your weekend plans or photos of your family per se, although some will do it. That's not common. It's really about sharing your professional interests. Even if you're a college student or a high school student who's just getting on there, it could be resharing articles or speakers or TED Talks that you see that are really interesting. That's one thing that often will pop up in my LinkedIn feed is like, oh yeah, that TED Talk, I've been meaning to watch that, and somebody just reshared it, or I thought this article was really valuable. As a company, I'm thinking about what are articles that fit within our brand, right? As a person, you can think about your personal brand. What is my personal brand, whether that's as a creative or as an engineer or as an activist, whatever that is, and kind of think of how are the things that I'm posting fitting in with my branding. So for example, with Beyond Education, I'm posting a lot of stuff on social emotional learning, a lot of things on education. Right now, the really hot topic is talking about homeschool, because there's so much dissidence about distance learning, blended learning. A whole other topic if you want to get into that. But in terms of how I'm using it very practically, in addition to sharing, I also find applicants And I get contacted a lot by applicants and by third parties who want to help consult with us. But I think one of the biggest things, your question on informational interviews, I also encourage students that we work with, so our older students, high schoolers and college students, who are looking to find internships or find positions or volunteer opportunities, to use their LinkedIn as not only a resume spot, which is great, but I think you can also use it as a way to connect with people to engage in an informational interview. So what does informational interview mean? As opposed to a job interview where the end goal is really to get a job, you're going in there with a very straightforward purpose, and it feels very intense most often because there feels like very high stakes. An informational interview is a much lower stakes. It can potentially have the same outcome as a job interview if you really knock it out of the park. But it's very low stakes in the sense of you're going and you're finding people in a field that you want to know more about. You may be very interested and know for sure it's what you want to go into, or you may just really be surveying to understand what in the world does this person do. Their title sounds really interesting, but what does that actually mean? And using an informational interview to dive deeper into that. So when we talk about where LinkedIn and informational interviews merge, LinkedIn can be the platform by which you engage and initiate that conversation. And the informational interview, you're bridging that to say, hey, I just direct messaged you on LinkedIn, or we connected, over an article or something like that. You say, hey, I would love to continue this conversation. Would you be willing to connect in person or virtually to let me chat with you a bit about what you do? It sounds really interesting. I'd love to know more. And so having an informational interview where you can ask those questions about, what do you do? What does your day-to-day look like? This is what I'm studying in class. How does this actually translate in real life? Because the biggest thing that I find is students and adults, myself included, we probably know about 1% of the actual careers and positions that are out in the world. Every day that I go to a networking event or just meet a person at a coffee shop, I often catch myself saying, you do what? And how much do you get paid for that? Because there's just new jobs popping up all of the time with technology, especially now with COVID, and how many companies have had to reinvent themselves and their positions, or fine-tune positions that maybe they were doing but not as prominent. And we know, the big ones, right? We know doctors, we know lawyers, and we know this really vague CEO business person position. But we're missing a whole myriad of positions that nobody's just ever talked about. So I think that's the power of an informational interview, and that's the exponential power of linking it, combining it with LinkedIn, where you can go and find these people in these positions in whatever ways. There's many ways to get there to find the person, and then engage with them and ask, what does this actually look like? And go full circle and say, okay, how does this factor into what I'm studying or what I'm currently doing? Before I go on too much of a monologue, I'm going to stop myself there and let you keep going.
No, really great tips, Lara. And then I loved it. And it seems like really this informational interview, and then the way you're explaining it, the once these people just establish their relationship with these experts, professionals, you name it, I believe it's going to be easier for them to even further that relationship, and then maybe even making those people like their mentors. I mean, I know that this mentoring, people think that it's, right away you can have a mentor's not, but isn't it a good start?
Yeah, well, and also recognize everybody wants to be a mentor. I think people are like, oh my gosh, I can't ask them. But here's the thing, for most people, it is one of the biggest honors, and in some way you're playing into all of our kind of little bit of narcissism, right? We all want to feel like we're at a point where we have information and insight to give to somebody else. Like, I'm finally at this point where I can speak to this person who is a couple years or many years younger than me, and like they respect me and honor me as somebody who's got it figured out in whatever capacity. So yeah, I think one of the biggest things that can come out of an informational interview very naturally is to gain a mentor. In fact, I did an interview with a friend of mine who's a very successful commercial real estate consultant who does deals all over the nation and works with very high wealth individuals. He went to UT Austin, and he said from his freshman year of high school, he started doing informational interviews. He got a list. I remember one of the things, I don't know if this is where he started, but I remember one of the things he mentioned is there was a publication, I think in Texas Monthly or some sort of Austin publication that said like top 50 best real estate agents. You know, we see the magazines for like top doctors or top whatever. So he would just start going down that list and finding their contact information, or then going on LinkedIn, before LinkedIn, and contacting them and saying, hey, I'm a UT student who thinks that they're interested in this field. Would you be willing to grab a coffee? And he said the connections he made by doing that, he's now 15 years out of college. The connections he made by doing that, some of those people are still his mentors today and have been pivotal in his success and his connection to the Austin community. And all he did was just cold call some people, develop a relationship with them. Not everybody. You're not going to link. You're not going to have an instant connection with everybody. So take that pressure off the table. But if you know, we're easier and more natural than others, and they've become, you know, friends and mentors to them.
Awesome, thank you. I remember as of today, you know, my time searching on LinkedIn to find out if LinkedIn Local exists, to find out the name of Dr. Gail Timberlake. I really spend, you know, the hours and hours, maybe days. I really appreciate it. I reach out to her through LinkedIn, and then here she is. She's amazing. I'm learning learning from her a lot. And Dr. Timberlake, I know that your expertise is like more emotional intelligence, and then Lara earlier mentioned that this is one of the, you know, the hot topics. Could you please tell us a little bit about, you know, how important emotional intelligence and then communication regarding to get the best ROI, you know, when people using on LinkedIn? Again, you can maybe link that to informational interviews, the mentoring, the personal branding, professional branding, but I want to hear from your perspective.
Well, yeah, I love this topic. You know, Laura is so good about mentoring, teaching people how to make these connections. And as an executive coach, I do the same thing. I don't call it informational interviews, but I challenge my clients that are leaders to have people within their teams. And then when I work with teams, challenge them to reach out to one person a week that's outside of their industry, that they're not talking about stuff within their industry, just to learn. Because when we learn more, we become more educated about what's happening, especially now. There's so much that's changing. So for instance, I do the same. Last week, I met with an individual who works with scaling businesses, who works in downtown Austin. And he told me a fascinating story about one of his clients who came out of college in debt and had no idea how to pay off the debt, but he was really good with statistics and numbers. So we started doing statistics and numbers about how to pay off debt when you get out of college. Ended up starting a business about that. And within 3 years, he had banks and institutions in lending and financial world offer a payoff for his company. It was one of those incredible stories. He sold it within 3 years for 4 times of what it cost him to start it. But I think those conversations just create creativity within our mind to get us thinking in ways that help our own pursuits, either personally or professionally. And they're really, really important to just get into conversations with people that are outside of our usual sphere of influence. So it's a really important thing. So I want to challenge our listeners to do that too, to just reach out to a person a week. You may or may not have follow-up with that person, but I guarantee you that if you're reaching out to at least a person a week, one of those will come back within a month, and you'll end up with at least one new person a month that you'll have a pretty fascinating conversation with. So in answer to your question, we talked about the first step is to engage with someone. The second one is to have something like an informal or an interview with them. informational interview. And the third one is, what do we do when we get there? How do we have these conversations that are productive for everyone? And I think that that's a really important topic, is like, how do you communicate in a way that brings a lot of life, not only from yourself to show who you are, but give life to the listener, so that at the end of that time, they're like, I am so glad I met this person, because that's what we want to have happen at the end, right? So I came up with a little acronym for us today, and the acronym is FOCUS. And so maybe this acronym will help us in answering that question, that how do you have conversations that produce ROI? So the first one for FOCUS is find. F for find something in that conversation that you can elaborate on that the other person brings up. So in every conversation, the first part of the conversation is we just have some kind of small talk. So it's really important to have small talk before we get to the intention of the conversation. And so find something within that conversation that you can pick up on, that person says, that you can elaborate on. Laura is really good at this. She does this all the time. I watch her do that. And it's really, it's super life-giving to the person who's listening, because they know, hey, you're really interested and you're listening to me. So it could be that they went fishing with their son and at Port A or wherever they live. So you can just ask a little bit about that. So the first letter for focus is find. Find something that's interesting out of what that other person is saying, and just elaborate on it a little bit. Ask curious questions. Let's get in a conversation about that. This O in focus is optimize. You know, take the time and optimize it. Be really intentional when you go in and optimize that time. So think beforehand, what is it that I'm looking for as an outcome in this conversation? When you optimize the time, you're making sure in advance, well, this is what I kind of want to go for. Now, it may change, and that's fine, but at least you know what you're going in for, and optimize the time. So realize at first you're going to do some small talk, and there's even a framework that I use for these conversations that make them flow really easily, but optimize the time. Use it well. Notice that you only have so long. I would say in these first times that you're having an informational interview, you would ask for maybe 30 minutes, not much more. If it goes more, that's great, but you're not asking for much more. So optimize the time. The C and focus is for cohesive. So when you're in that conversation, don't go down a bunch of bunny trails. Just kind of like, you know, focus on the other person, get cohesive in the kinds of things that you're going to talk about. Don't go here and there in everything you're going to say. Just stay cohesive. The third one, the fourth is unravel and focus. F-O-C-U for unravel. U is for unravel. Unravel yourself before you get in that conversation. So, you know, we often don't take enough time to just take care of ourselves. And so for the U in focus, it's just unravel, get unraveled in the way that you're thinking about your thoughts and the way that you are taking care of yourself. You know, get into routines where you're taking care of yourself on a weekly and daily basis. Self-care is so important, and we often forget that. The S is for synthesize. Synthesize your ideas. In a conversation, wrap up the conversation at the end. So say you go 30 minutes, at the end, just wrap up what you said. There is nothing more delightful in a conversation than to have somebody sort of wrap up what happened in that conversation. Well, it was really nice to meet with you. I'm glad we had a chance to talk about this and this and this. If you would like to follow up, I'd be really interested in talking again, or maybe that's not what your intention is. It depends on what you want to do with the conversation. But to really synthesize what happened, synthesize means to combine parts into a unified entity. So just combine all these parts of the conversation in something that's like a package and deliver that through what you say. So I think these maybe, I hope that serves your listeners to just focus. I think that focusing is really an important thing in conversations to really bring some kind of result that is positive in the end.
I loved it. And then Lara already shared, I believe, that.
Yeah, I was just going to ask. Okay, Gail, one more time. Can you repeat? So the F is for find.
The O is for optimize. So optimize your time, go in with intention, ask yourself even, what is the outcome I want from this? So O is for optimize. You could also say it's for outcome, either one, optimize, but you're wanting to optimize that time for the outcome that you want.
C?
The C is for be cohesive in your thoughts. Don't go down these bunny trails, but just be really cohesive. You know, like bring them to a place where you're staying within your lane and not going here, there, and everywhere. Just be cohesive in the way you're thinking about it. And you can think about it like going down a sidewalk, you know, not going here or there. The fourth one for you, FOCU, is for unravel. Unravel yourself before you get there. And when I think of unravel, we can get so bound up in our own life. I think somebody is on unmute. We might encourage who's ever unmuted themselves to mute themselves a bit. Yeah, to just get unraveled. And when I think about that, I think, you know, like, how do we take care of ourselves during the week and during the day? You know, what's your morning routine? What's your evening routine? What do you do each week? How are you journaling? So keeping journals are really important. So unravel is for the U, and S is for synthesize. So combining the parts of that conversation to wrap up after 30 minutes. There's something really delightful in having something in a package to deliver who you just spoke with.
Yeah, and add for anybody, if you are like me and are not an auditory learner and you're going to forget everything, like the synthesize, when you said that, I think of all the conversations where I've had these great combos and I'll forget details, especially if we're talking about informational interviews. There is nothing wrong with taking notes while you're having conversations like this. And there's nothing wrong with telling the person when you started the conversations, hey, I'm going to take a few notes. Is that okay? I've never had anybody say no, because we all learn different ways and we all take information in different ways. And so you need to write notes, and then that way you can synthesize and say, okay, here are the things that I heard you say, this, and this. It's going to be powerful because they know that you were paying attention. You know how the information to take away for yourself. You're not going to forget it. Sometimes I'll even take it on my phone. When I do that, I'm very intentional about telling the person, hey, I'm taking notes on my phone. I'm not texting somebody while we're talking. I just, don't have something to handwrite. But I think that's a really good tool. And I would just follow up with Gail's point on, if you're talking about an informational interview, I would hope that the intention is that you're going to continue this conversation. So I would strongly encourage you to wrap it up by saying, how can we stay in contact and where can we go from here?
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I really love it. It's because it's easy to remember. And then most of the time is, I believe that we need, in particular, our students, a tool to use it, to implement it. And then this is a great strategy. In fact, Kevin right now is one of our, the audience listening to you. He said that it's a very insightful, the tool to use it. So I just want to share that comment with you as well. Awesome. I'm loving this conversation. Thank you. Okay. So the next, the question I have, it's about the personal and professional branding. And then even we can add the business branding in this list, is because most of the time, at least like I've been, getting that question. So do I need to focus on my personal, the branding, but I am the professional. So should I focus on that professional on LinkedIn? And then I do have a business as well. So it has to be a different page or group. So how that works on your experience, and then what are some strategies you can share with, us? Kyle?
Yeah, well, that's such a good point. Some people do more than one thing. So they do one thing and they do another thing. And so there are professionals that will say, find a way to bring those in together so that when you're presenting yourself, you're presenting your whole self. And there are others that will say, do it separately, one on one side and one on the other side. So I think for most people, that's a personal choice. I do two different things and I'm beginning to bring them into one, but for a long time I did them separately. So I'm finding that I see people that do that both ways. But to remember, LinkedIn is really for that professional side. So whatever side that you really want to show out in the world, I believe LinkedIn is for that. It may be that you do other things that you do on are important to you that come out on other social media. But for LinkedIn, it's really important to remember that's what you're wanting to do to further your career. That's really what LinkedIn is all about. So if that's a one thing if that helps as a benchmark, should I put this on LinkedIn or should I not put this on LinkedIn? It's always a good benchmark. Is this the thing that I'm going to do for my professional life? Not that people don't want to know who you are personally. They do. They certainly do. But the main focus is what you would want to put out there in the world that shows what you do professionally.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would just add to that. I agree. LinkedIn is definitely a professional brand. I just attended a personal branding seminar in Nashville by top experts in the field who work with people who have millions and millions of followers. I didn't even realize they had such a crazy portfolio until I got there. I was like, okay, I'm not there yet, but that's the goal. But I would just add, even though LinkedIn is the professional, I can't stress enough from personal experience of someone who has hired people, the research and the branding doesn't stop at LinkedIn. And what I mean by that is if you think that your Instagram or your Facebook is just your personal life and therefore it's a free-for-all, that is a big lie. People, as we've seen time and time again on the news and whatnot, we really have to be cautious and we really have to be careful. And I speak from a friend who just had this happen last week. Unfortunately, had a picture come up that completely misrepresented her and her organization that she runs, and now she's hiring PR firms to deal with it. So I cannot emphasize enough that your personal brand now more than ever is very tightly linked to your professional brand. Me as Laura Kilgore, I am always thinking about how does this link back to, how does this influence, how would people see this as the Beyond Education business? The two are interconnected in nearly every way. And that's not just because I'm the business owner. I also have high expectations for the people that I hire, that they're upholding a standard of, I am a professional and I represent this business, whatever it is, even if it wasn't in education. I represent this business, and how am I showcasing myself as a professional well? So I have this conversation all the time with high school and college students. If you think you can get away with posting stuff because you're young and you're in college and nobody cares, I ask you to double and triple and quadruple think about that, because those things, once they're on the internet, it's hard to erase them. Not everybody needs to know about your every move, and your personal brand does matter. And now that we're on social media from a very young age, we are branding ourselves from a very young age, whether we're conscious of it or not. So I think be wise. I do think that your personal and business brand do link. And I think if you're somebody who's getting ready to enter the professional field or trying to switch positions or change positions, I think you have to be very intentional and very wise in the tune of what you are posting and reposting, and think very strategically about how does this reflect back on me. It doesn't mean don't be unauthentic at all. Be your authentic self, but not everything that you think has to be put on social media. You can still engage and have real conversations in real life without necessarily posting about all of that all the time on every platform. So there's a lot more that can be said about that, but I'll leave it there for right now.
Awesome. No, I mean, I love these points a lot. Always, I guess, career advisors, suggest our students definitely use LinkedIn, even any social media platform really be mindful when using them is because recruiters, the research shows that almost like 98, 99% of the recruiters definitely use LinkedIn to find the best talents. Don't you think that they're gonna be looking for your social media accounts to see that
You
who
bet.
you are? So be professional.
It's the first thing I do. If I go to hire somebody, if somebody applies for a job with us, we find their LinkedIn, which is pretty easy because that's usually the one they'll put on their resume. And then you better believe we're trying to find their Instagram or Facebook accounts or Twitter accounts to see what they're also posting and putting up there. We are branding ourselves constantly. And same thing goes for myself. So I think it's just really powerful, and I think a lot of people undercut its value, and that's where we get in sticky situations that most times you can get yourself out of, but you never want to discount yourself before you even get in the door. You know, create every opportunity you can to get that door open. And I think just really practical on the more positive note, when you talk about personal branding and LinkedIn, that's where that consistent posting and resharing, it doesn't always have to be your content that you're posting, but resharing stuff that you're really passionate about. Like I said, resharing TED Talks, resharing articles, like that feed shows up when you look at your LinkedIn. So if I go and look at Jane Doe or John Doe and I'm saying, wow, they're posting a ton about college admissions, or they're posting a ton about inspirational speakers who I follow, I'm going to get excited about that as a recruiter, as an interviewer, as a business owner, and it's going to be really easy for me to engage with them, to where if I just go to someone's LinkedIn profile, they have nothing on there but maybe the school they've attended. That doesn't give us much information to talk about.
Awesome. I have one question and then one comment here. So, I mean, we could maybe wait at the end, but just in case, I don't want to miss it. So the comment is, again, one of our artists, he said that it's good to know that professionals respond to requests regarding informational interviews, is because he said that before he thought they wouldn't respond. But you mentioned Lara, so they pretty much, they're responding to your comment.
Yeah, and I think also keep in mind, this has happened to me, and I have been someone who has done this unintentionally to someone else. Some people check LinkedIn more often or less often than others. So I think be adamant about it. If you don't get a response, send a follow-up comment, try again. Sometimes there are weeks when I sign in on LinkedIn every day. There are weeks when I sign in on LinkedIn once a week, if that. So I think keep trying to connect with them. I would probably cap it at 3 times. If they don't respond to you after 3 times, let it go for whatever reason, and don't take offense to it either. It's probably not you. And I've also had that happen to me, where I'll reach out to people and they won't respond. So sometimes I'll try and go and find a direct email, or maybe a peer or somebody adjacent to them in their company that I could reach out to. But I would say don't be distraught or dismayed. It's just like sales. I think the percentages, and Gail, you probably know this from working with other companies. I think the percentage out there is like, for every 10 calls you make, expect that one's going to pick up the phone. So we're talking about a 10% success rate.
Well, and I wanted to hop in on that. I have people, I probably get like 25 people contact me on LinkedIn a day, and I do not keep up with all of them. I don't, and especially if I'm not checking back every day, and which I don't, I'm not getting back with everyone. So I think, for me, I believe when people contact me, if they're very specific about what they want, I am much more likely to respond to them. If they're kind of just like reaching out and saying something kind of nebulous, and I know that they haven't done their research to know who I am and why they're contacting me, then it's much less likely that I will, or my virtual assistant will respond, because I know that they don't know enough about me. They're just trying to get my attention. I think it's kind of like, when I was a kid, I was the kind who would always want the attention of everyone in the room. And so my parents would tell a story that they would have a dinner party, and I would walk into the room as a 3-year-old and start doing cartwheels in the room, in the dinner party with all tables set up, because I wanted everyone to look at me. Sometimes I feel like a little bit like that on LinkedIn when I get messages. It's people trying to get my attention, but they're not asking specific questions or specific requests. So you know what, one thing that I would say, whether it's a business trying to reach out to a business or whatever that reach out is just to be very concise and clear about what it is that you're contacting someone about. That's not the place to just start up the small talk. That's really the place to say, you know, I've looked into you, I know who you are, and this is my quick ask. I'm much more likely to answer when it comes to that. Yeah, so that's what I would say about reaching out on LinkedIn.
Awesome. So pretty much like they have to, you know, follow up, don't give up, but maybe the other strategy could be just maybe, you know, reaching out to more people, not just focusing on with just the 3 professions, even one. I believe that having more alternatives, it's gonna make it easier.
Sure.
Like you said, Lara, don't take it, you know, personally, don't get offended. So I loved it. You only to touch base regarding these, you know, professionalism on LinkedIn. But again, the question, I mean, if you want to add anything, I believe that we already answered these, but how that, you know, the posting about politics might, you know, the impact someone's, you know, like that social presence on LinkedIn or professionalism, if you want to jump in.
Wow, if there was ever a time that your posts about politics is going to make an impact, this would be it. So unless you want to really launch that conversation, I would say, you know, what's your intent? Perhaps that's always the question. And I think that's the question in a lot of these conversations, is for us to look back to ourselves and say, what's my intention here? Before we launch into whatever it is that we're going to say. I don't know that we're often that intentional about what we say. We often just say something before we even know why we're saying it. Maybe we're trying to satisfy some need that we have, but to be super intentional, like, why am I saying this? What's my purpose? And to think what the ramifications may be if I do say something. It may be what you want. And if it is, then I would say go there. If it's not, then I would say find another venue. There may be close friends that you can share that stuff with. There's a really fine line between posting stuff all the time and just asking the question, who is this more appropriate for? Is it appropriate for a large audience, a lot of people I don't know? Like for me, I think I have like 7,500 followers on LinkedIn. Is that something I need for all those people, a lot of whom I don't know? Or is it something I'm really trying to work out in my own mind, like things I'm not sure about yet? I haven't thought through stuff. And I really, as a verbal processor, I really just need my friends to like bounce stuff off of. So I would say start there, ask the question, that personal question, what's my intention here?
Awesome.
Yeah, I agree 100% with Gail in terms of before you press submit or before you hit post, take a breath and think about, is this the audience? Exactly what she said. Just take a pause and take a moment to think about, is this what I want? I'm sure all of us have had friends who have started becoming very outspoken about what their views are, and that's fine. Just know that you are going to limit yourself to a particular population, or draw attention from people who you may not want to necessarily deal with criticism, attacks, negative feedback, things like that. I think my personal thing, more often than not, I opt to not be political on my personal and professional feeds. I don't find that that's the right space to have those conversations for me, because those types of conversations require authenticity and vulnerability. And I think if we as a population and as a community can start to re-engage people in difficult, tough conversations in relationship, I think that's where we're going to start to see the solutions that we all want. And Gail is an expert at this. When she coaches people, when she was just talking about having conversations like this, I mean, she can give you all sorts of pointers on it. But I think all of us are really wanting, across the nation, across the world, we're really wanting solutions, and we're really wanting to see us become better. And that requires having face-to-face conversations. And I don't find that reposting and resharing on social platforms helps to move that needle forward oftentimes. There are definitely opportunities where it can be done in a way that's inclusive and positive, but I think just take a pause before you post it and think about some of the things Gail said as far as, is the right audience? Is this going to start a conversation that I'm willing to have? So that's my sense on that. There's all sorts of takes on it, and you guys will find your way, you know. But I think my concern and my hope for anybody in this conversation is I just don't want anybody to be limited from a job opportunity because of something they haphazardly post. They may be passionate about it, you may be passionate about it, but I don't want anybody to ever have a disconnect or a door shut in your face because of an article that you posted that you may be passionate about, you may just thought was interesting, but can easily be misinterpreted.
I agree. Yeah, that's really good. You know, when I talk about unravel, like self-care, I think part of self-care is making sure that we're in communities where we can talk about these things, you know, that we're making sure that part of our self-care is finding good friends where we can be authentic and kind of work through these kinds of issues. And that may be a place to ask, hey, you know, like, do you think this would be appropriate if I post this idea or not? So yeah, I think part of unraveling and self-care is really finding those small communities. And that's where the change is going to happen anyway. The changes for our society that we are looking for are going to happen in those small venues. They're going to happen at home. They're going to happen in our, like Laura said, within, you know, those small community groups. They're not going to happen because we posted something. They're going to happen as we care well for one another and become authentic in small, you know, small little community groups that are important to us, where we can love well and be loved well.
Great. Yeah. Great points. I loved it. And then I already started using your tool, Gail, like focus is because the second letter O is the outcome. So what is the outcome like you sharing that political post on LinkedIn? Right away, I thought about it. So
yeah,
I believe
very
that tells,
good.
that tells a lot about, you know,
yeah,
don't do it.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thinking about our intention, I believe, is really one of those things that we don't often do. We don't spend the time with ourselves when we're unraveling to figure out, okay, what am I doing? What am I? So yeah, outcome is really important. What is the outcome that we're going for? And what's the best outcome for our people, our community, our business? You know, I work with businesses and CEOs, and I'm, you know, constantly asking, what is the outcome that you want? And then let's backstep and find out, okay, well, if that's what you want, then how do we achieve that? I think that's a really good skill for all of us, to step back that many steps and start from there to get to the outcome that we want.
Awesome. So we have like 5 more minutes, but before we jump in, maybe to, you know, to get some questions from our audience if they have. My last question will be about, you know, the using LinkedIn really efficiently and then getting that, you know, ROI, so the best return of investment. So we already talked about some do's and don'ts, but some other practical tips you want to share with our audience. Any of you can jump in.
Yeah. Yeah, well, one thing that I would say is you're constantly going for those real relationships, and hence LinkedIn Local. You know, you're really using an online platform to get to an offline relationship. Even if there's a distance issue, you're really going for the relationship. So how do you post to develop relationships in a way that really, you know, ending with questions is a great way to do that. Bringing up provocative, not provocative, but yeah, like relational topics or questions at the end, get other people involved. There's a lot of people who teach how to do that really well. But yeah, I would think that we're using online to get to offline, no matter the distance, geography wise, geographically. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. And that was the purpose of the LinkedIn Local movement from the beginning is, it's great to have a virtual community, but it's even better to have an in-person. Plenty of studies show that we need actual human-to-human contact, in-person contact. I know now that looks a little bit different because of safety precautions with COVID, and but I still think we can get some of that through Zoom or through various virtual platforms. But I think just kind of what we said from the beginning, like, don't give up, and don't think just because the first 5 messages you sent to somebody didn't get a response, that means that it was you and that it was a failure. Oftentimes it's the other person. Like Gail said, either just getting lost in an inbox or, not logging on to their LinkedIn, whatever that is. So be really consistent. Be consistent in what you post and how you post it, and keep messaging people, keep messaging people until you finally get a response. And I would say one thing that I still have to remind myself to do is at the end of every conversation, whether it's virtual or in person, always ask that person to, for how you can stay connected. And if there's anybody that they can think to connect you with, always think of it as a call to action for them to say, I really value you so much that I would love to stay connected. And 2, I think you're really a great source of information, and I bet that you have friends and other connections that would also be helpful on this journey that I'm on. Would you be willing to connect me? That's a skill that I'm trying to remind myself to do. And the nice thing is, once you have an in-person or a one-on-one call, it's a little easier to do via email afterward, right? Because you've built rapport. But I think getting really good at asking for what you need, which I know can be really difficult, especially, again, I know for females, just from a lot of personal stories, we often don't want to ask for what we need or ask for more than we feel like we should. But we need to, and you have every right to do that. And people feel acknowledged and oftentimes feel honored for you to even ask them that, because it's recognizing that they have value and that you're just wanting to tap into that so that you can be successful as well.
Awesome. So it seems like we don't have any questions, but I want to wrap it up with our fun facts. So mine is honestly, I've been using LinkedIn for a while. I believe 2009 or 10, I would say, maybe one of the early adopters, if it is not super early though. But I was at UTSA looking for internship site, and then we were not able to find it. And then through LinkedIn, a friend of mine, talk about LinkedIn. Oh, really? I never heard about it. So pretty much we shared on LinkedIn, we're looking for internship, the site. And then we had that site at Texas State University, San Marcos. And then the second is the most important and memorable moment. So I learned about my current position at, the May Center at A&M San Antonio on LinkedIn. I didn't even know until that time that, A&M San Antonio, like I was thinking more A&M, it's like more college station, if it makes sense. But the LinkedIn is like really working in my, the personal professional life. Do you want to share any fun fact and then, pretty much complete our session? Do you have any fun fact regarding your LinkedIn experience?
Well, part of my experience is connecting with people from all over the world. I told you that I connected with Ann McAfee, who started LinkedIn Local. And from Australia, there were 5 individuals. They were from 5 different continents. And so I've loved that international connection that kind of hooked me with a whole group that now does stuff globally. And because part of my life experience includes global travel, that was a really fun, it's been really fun. So I know we're going to wrap up, but that's just a quick one that I can bring to the table.
Awesome. That is great. How about you, Lara?
I actually hired my first employee from a LinkedIn DM. Wow. So, yeah. So I was looking for somebody, was praying and hoping that I would find someone. And this person just all the things I've told you, she direct messaged me. She was very clear about what her intention was. She was switching out of being a teacher in the classroom, was just on the hunt and trying to figure out what was her next step. And we both graduated from Trinity and wanted to just get coffee and chat some more. And that ended up I think it was within 2 weeks. You know, we chatted and got coffee, and within 2 weeks of our coffee dates, thought she would be a perfect fit for this position that I'm trying to fill, and hired her. And she's still with me 2 years later and has been pivotal in our growth as a company. So, yeah.
What a great story. Awesome. So really, thank you so much both for joining us today and sharing your wisdom with us. And hopefully within 24 hours, I'm going to be sharing this recording on our Tamusa Mays YouTube channel. So, Jaguar community or whoever, that missed this session, they will be able to watch whole recording. But again, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it goes without saying, please feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, be direct. Use some of those skills and reach out to us.
Awesome.
Yes, we'd love to talk to you. And so, Yasir, we've talked about a number of things today. We've talked about how LinkedIn works, how to get connected offline from an online profile and platform. We've talked about how to communicate well using Focus, F-O-C-U-S. And now in synthesizing. We would love to see you again. This was really, really fun. Let's do it again.
Awesome.
Sometime.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we will for sure. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.